Penn State is nearly a 50-point favorite against Villanova today, yet they have to make a statement in this one.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are locked on to Penn State football. Thank you so much for joining me on this live pregame show. One final look at Penn State versus Villanova, talking about week 3 in the Big Ten, taking your questions and your comments to discuss anything Penn State football related. So this is about a 30-minute pregame show to take you all the way up till when the college football kickoff, the college football kickoff and games kickoff today at noon. And just to jump right back into the analysis that we've had over this week for Penn State versus Villanova. I mean, Penn State is almost a 50-point favorite in this game. 47.5 points. Total set at about 55.5. Usually those FBS, FCS lines take some time to be released, but that's the kind of game that this is. Oh, Penn State scheduling a week non-conference schedule. Hey, this has been in the works for years. The Nevada game was scheduled all the way back in 2018. So I don't know that we can look at this and say, well, this was intentional for the 2025 season. It's just kind of the way that it is. Nevada going through a rebuild. Florida International, they were better than we expected, right? And then Villanova is an FCS team, and I don't blame Penn State for trying to schedule interstate teams. And then they conveniently have the bye before Oregon here. But that's why they need to make a statement. You have the bye week. You have Oregon. You didn't play that great against either of Nevada or Florida International. Now, the defense did, but it's the offense. It's really the offense that needs to make a statement. Those sloppy mistakes, those question marks that still linger about the offensive line. What is Drew Aller doing? What Nicholas Singleton, some fans have pointed to him to say that he's not as good as he used to be. But they've shown too many inconsistencies against weaker competition. And that's what most people are going to want to see cleaned up here. So the defense has been great. Jim Knowles and the starters, the ones and twos, the first string and the second string, have held opponents to 3 points. They shut out FIU. And even when the offense wasn't at its best, you think that, oh, okay, the defense will eventually bend and eventually break. And that didn't happen. So Jim Knowles and this defense have really settled in despite having some question marks at defensive end. Okay, if Zariah Fisher's not available, or if he's not going to be 110%, who is that next guy? Will Chaz Coleman emerge? Okay, you have Deni Dennis Sutton, you have Zane Duran along the defensive line, but interior of the defensive tackle spot, the interior of the defensive line, that's a question mark. That needs checked out. Xavier Gilliam, Eni White, Ty Blanding have given Penn State a lot. And I know, I get it. They're a group of 6 opponents. And then today's an FCS opponent with Villanova. But Penn State's defensive line is in a much better spot. But the offense needs to make that statement. Go out. If you want to do a play action 70-yard pass to Devontae Ross, I do not blame them. I am all for it in today's game. Penn State should be, I think they're going to play with a little more energy. This is a 3:30 kickoff. I look at that FIU game, and I see a team that just came out and played undisciplined. I don't question the talent. I don't question the play calling. I just kind of question the execution. And I think that's pretty general across the board for most media outlets here covering Penn State, is just these were simple, undisciplined mistakes. And when it's a noon kickoff, it's not sunny. There's no buzz from the season's back, and you got to just get through these non-conference games before you get through the Big Ten slate. We're all human. You're gonna have those moments, right? As fans, as people covering the game, I have more interest in Penn State versus Oregon in the whiteout than I do in Villanova or FIU in Nevada, and that is true across the board. I get Penn State's 1-0 mentality. but you also have to be able to still dominate the competition, use your talent, leverage it against these weaker teams. You could also look at it as Penn State is trying to, do some different things. Play from some uncomfortable spots because you know that you're going to beat FIU. You know you're going to beat Nevada. So you're trying some different things. You're trying to work on some of those inconsistencies and bring out those not necessarily weaknesses, but things that aren't fine-tuned per se, and get them fine-tuned against competition that is not going to beat you because you make those simple mistakes. Offense needs to be able to put up at least 35. I mean, let's look at Indiana, for example. Talking about the Big Ten, Indiana was well up at half, and they ended up defeating Indiana State 73-0. Now, Penn State doesn't need to beat Villanova 73-0, but they do need to. I think they do need to cover here. I think they do need to put up at least 7-8 touchdowns in this game. I'd say 8. I have my score prediction, which I'll give here in just a moment, my official score prediction for anybody following. But that's what Penn State should be able to do against an FCS opponent. Indiana can do it at home. Penn State can absolutely do it. Well, the backups are going to go in and this and that. Okay, yes, still to an extent. But Drew Aller going into his 4th season with Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, the offensive line as good as it is, the pass catchers being upgraded compared to a season ago. The defense is flying around the football field. They should be able to handle this game no problem and should be up at half by at least 30 points. This should be 31-0 at half at a minimum. At a minimum. I don't blame Penn State for wanting to get the backups in sooner rather than later. But I think across the board, these football players and the coaches, they see everything. They see what's said on social media. So I think Penn State is going to have a chip on its shoulder today. I'm expecting the explosive plays. I'm expecting a lot more fire and energy from the offense. It's not rainy or it's not on and off, rain, inclement weather, noon kickoff, right? You go from the high to start the season to the low of, we got to play another non-conference opponent like this that we should be able to handle. It's 80. It's sunny. I'm thinking Penn State does dominate in this one truly. Between explosive plays, a wide scoring margin, Penn State covers the spread, and the backups get in, and they continue that too. I really don't think Penn State's going to let off the gas here because the team, I think, is playing with a chip on its shoulder, not really just the offense, because the defense got a little criticism too. Again, even though the starters have only allowed 3 points to this point in time. Again, that was a garbage touchdown, in under 60 seconds left against Nevada. So give me Penn State today, 63-7. I do think Villanova, because Villanova is still a well-coached team, and we'll talk more about them in the second segment again, but I want to hear from you. I want your questions. I want your comments, your concerns about this game or concerns about Oregon or what you really like about this Penn State team. But Villanova is still enough of a test for Penn State. They still offer enough resistance. Mark Ferrante going into his 9th season. I mean, this is a well-coached team. Veterans like Pat McQuaid. I really like their running back duo. They have their own FCS version, essentially, of Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen with Avett and Ragland. So Villanova has its own dynamic duo at running back. Offensively, but Penn State's defensive line and front seven should be able to just completely dominate Villanova's front five. Wide receivers are pretty decent on the outside, but compared to Penn State's corners, right? So I say 63-7. I think there will be a lot of pressure from the front seven, whether Jim Knowles uses it organically or he dials up some blitzes. I don't think McQuaid's going to have a lot of time to throw back there, and Penn State should have maybe in the neighborhood of 5, 6, or 7 sacks. I'm thinking a lot of pressure. Chaz Coleman gets in on the fun. Zariah Fisher, Dennis Sutton. So that's what we're expecting for today's game. Let me know your thoughts in the live comment section. We'll go back and forth, have a Q&A, also talk about the Big Ten as well in this pregame show. It is all coming up next here live on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda in this episode is brought to you by our special segment with Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. And there are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is, so we're going all the way back to last Saturday, but I got to go with Chaz Coleman. Chaz Coleman getting his first career sack as a true freshman. Expectations are continuing to connect with not only the coaching staff had lofty expectations. Then, as we begin to see it at practice, but now in the games, that strip sack fumble, first of his career, and nearly returned it for a touchdown. What a moment for a true freshman player in the spotlight. He moved the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, and thank you so much for joining the live show. Let's check out the live chat. Yes, Penn State's preseason continues. Everyone chill. I want to see the underclassmen ball out. All right, so let's focus on some of the younger rising players here, okay? We're going to see Ethan Grunkemeyer probably midway through the third quarter. Maybe. Who knows if we even... Now, if the offense is still a little sluggish, I think this is a type of game where the offense, the discourse has been, we left it out there. We left points on the board against Nevada. We left points on the board against FIU. If there's any instance of that against Villanova, I could see Aller and the starters and the immediate backups maybe going in for an additional drive, but probably around that 8-minute mark in the third quarter, we should expect to see Grunkemeyer, Cam Wallace, Kobe Howard. Is this a game where we see Kobe Howard? Because they're trying to balance his red shirt. They're trying to be careful with how they use his red shirt. So I think that we'll see a lot of Tyseer Denmark. So Ethan Grunkemeyer, Tyseer Denmark, that is something that, I mean, that's a future duo right there. After Drew Aller moves on, all of these senior veteran pass catchers between Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross, Trevor Pena, they all move on. That's going to be the connection going into next season. So figure that out now, right? As far as backups go, Chaz Coleman will play a ton, Xavier Gilliam. Need to see more from Jalen Harvey and Malachi Williams, because still at defensive end, okay, you have denied Dennis Sutton. You have Zariah Fisher. He's back, okay? He's healthy enough, right? There's still question marks if he's going to be able to go through a full season. You have Chaz Coleman, which is great, but then after that, okay, Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, Yvonne Kamaju, I want to see them play a ton from start to finish. They're playing a full quarters or as much as they can handle in today's game. That's kind of my expectation there, is that you have to get players ready because you're going to need the depth. So it's not just, oh, we'll get them in ASAP in the second half. No, have them play against the starters, because Chaz Coleman has proved enough to me that he's reliable and can be that third defensive end, either right after denied Dennis Sutton or has to go in for Zariah Fisher. Crazy. True freshman who's enrolled late, right? And I discussed it in the Friday episode, what Chaz Coleman is truly capable of. So if you missed that show, I encourage you to go check it out. It's up on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Defensive tackle, again, Eni White already has a sack this season. Ty Blanding continues to push starting offensive linemen back into the pocket. He is truly, the technique is still getting there, but he has the athleticism, the strength, the pure raw talent. It's just a matter of figuring out the technique and the X's and O's and everything, but Blanding's getting there. I like more so what Penn State has had at defensive tackle after saying, hey, I don't know about this group. If there's anybody that holds this team back, it might be defensive tackle. I don't think that's the case anymore. At linebacker, probably an Anthony Specca. See if you can get Dakari Nelson. The linebacker room, when Jim Knowles said, I only trust 3 players and I'll roll with those 3 no matter what, Tony Rojas, Amari Campbell, and Dom DeLuca, it's looking like the linebacker room, instead of defensive tackle, the linebacker room could potentially be that liability throughout the season if they don't get that corrected. I need to see Specca step up. I need to see Dakari Nelson or somebody. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a LeVar Arrington II at this point in time. He's still trying to figure it out. All the athleticism, all the raw talent in the world, but I think the game's a little fast for him right now. So if you're expecting the future number 11 to be out there sooner rather than later, just hold off on that for a second. I just want the run blocking to look better, a win, and everyone to stay healthy. That's another key to the game, yes. aside from these early preseason injuries, Josiah Brown, Max Granville, most notably at defensive end, they could absolutely use him at defensive end this season. I know that much, but you still got to kind of roll with the punches here. Caden Saunders too. And then there's probably, I always preface this when I discuss injuries. I talk about the main ones, but there are still players that we don't know about that are banged up and haven't officially been ruled out for the season because they're not part of the first, second, or third string. So those players are out long term that we know. We know that Jamin Williams has been dealing with bumps and bruises. Obviously, Zariah Fisher too, Zion Tracy. But for the most part across the board, this is what I want to get to, is that Penn State has been really healthy. They haven't had a player sustain an injury leaving Nevada, leaving FIU. All of those games, they came away with a clean bill of health. And that's kind of the best case scenario here. They do have the bye week, but I want Penn State to be at its strongest because you get the luxury of preparing for Oregon for a full 2 weeks. Oregon's got to go on the road at noon today, which we'll talk about in the final segment, against Northwestern. But then they got to play Oregon State next week. Penn State, yes, okay, are they battle tested? Are they going to be ready? That's understandable, the rest versus rust debate. But I like that Penn State actually has a full 2 weeks to prepare for one of its biggest games on the schedule, and Oregon does not. Oregon's got to go through Northwestern. Oregon's got to go through Oklahoma State. Sure, they'll be battle tested, but they don't get as much focus on Penn State as Penn State gets to have towards them. Run blocking, yeah, and that's timing. That's not a talent issue. Again, they were playing so well. This group, Sal Wormley's the only difference. Not with the team anymore. Anthony Donko moves into right guard. This team was dominating against Notre Dame. I get it, it's a loss, but they were still dominant against Notre Dame. SMU, Boise State, Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. I know what this group is capable of. It's simple miscommunication issues. That's all it is. They can figure it out. It's not this is a wholesale change they need to make. Nope, just some minor adjustments. Agreed, Penn State holding back for real competition. Potentially, they are not limiting themselves, but Penn State is extremely conscious of, we don't need to throw the kitchen sink at Villanova. We don't need to throw the kitchen sink against FIU. If they wanted to put 70 points up against those teams, they would. They don't need to. So you rotate in the backups very early, very often. You try some different plays here and there. You work out some of those kinks that you've identified early on. That is what Penn State is using the non-conference schedule for. Why do you need to win by 70, 80 points against an FIU? You don't. You still want to win comfortably and convincingly and not look sloppy doing it. It's really just the offense. Defense has played phenomenally, special teams as well. It's the offense. Chaz Coleman is a difference maker. Yes, he is. True freshman, enrolled late, played a year and a half max of defensive end in high school. And he's not just, he's depth. No, he's a playmaker. He is a serious contributor now. I will be at the game today. After I wrap up this pregame show, I will be at the game today. So I'll be heading up there after that. A better conversion rate on 3rd and 4th downs would be fantastic as well. Red zone efficiency too. Against Nevada, the biggest thing was finishing drives. Now, I'll applaud Penn State for the fact that they didn't punt in that game. James Franklin made that very clear. Hey, we didn't punt all day. Oh, we know, coach. But you also got stopped half the time and had to settle for field goals. So the offense, hey, that's good because sometimes your best defense is your offense. And what that means, I think a few years back, I never truly understood what that meant, but now I do, as I should, covering the team and covering the game more year in and year out. And what that means for anybody that doesn't know, it's not so much about putting up points. Yes, that helps, but running out the clock, sustaining 10, 12, 15 play drives, being methodical, keeping the opponent's offense on the sideline, your defense on the sideline to keep them rested. Because offenses, they get hot. They get streaky. When they get in a rhythm, and the more you're on the football field, you build that routine and you get better and you build that momentum. And the defense, it's kind of like an all or nothing situation. And but that's the thing, it can go in reverse. If your defense is on the football field too much, you really don't get to build that similar type of rhythm that an offense does when they are out there sustaining drives. So Penn State, that's what they want to do. Penn State wants to be, they don't want to be this team that gets into high scoring types of games, shootouts with opposing offenses. You very well might do that against Oregon. You really don't get to pick and choose what kind of game you get into against the Ducks. However, Penn State would rather run those 7 offensive lineman formations and just run the football with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Maybe you cycle in Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, whatever the case is. They would rather go power football and run those 10, 12 play, 15 play drives and get into a rock fight than say, all right, let's have all 3 of our new wide receivers get 100 yards each and some of the tight ends as well. That's not what Penn State wants to do. They want to run the football. They want to be a physical team. And that's why they were so open with it. Hey, we're going to have 7 offensive lineman sets. We're going to be a power football type of team. That's what you have to do to close out these football games, especially in the Big Ten and against these teams that are new to the Big Ten. They don't play USC this year, but against Oregon, against UCLA, against eventually Washington, again, they played Washington last year. That power football is almost their kryptonite to an extent. All right, we got another break. I see a few more comments popping up, so we'll discuss those as well. And then look around the Big Ten, not as exciting as week 2, but key matchups with Oregon and Northwestern, Alabama and Wisconsin. There are some ones that are intriguing. And that is coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is also brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. And since it's the weekend, let's look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving money, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. Okay, I went with Chaz Coleman before, but I'm going to go with Katron Allen with Penn State here because he delivered in a big way. It's the fourth quarter when you're not up by a ton against FIU, but you're looking for that closeout performance, and that's what Katron Allen gave them. Almost a 70-yard touchdown, 67 yards on that play. The blocking set it up perfectly. Katron Allen tiptoeing the sideline, and we saw a new gear to Katron Allen's speed this season that we haven't seen before. He came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week to week, you've been following along through training camp, you know that this performance was not a fluke. And just like Katron Allen delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And today's show is also brought to you by Drip Drop. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything is working better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skincare, right? But getting enough fluids through the day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. And I got the citrus variety pack for myself to try. And I'll tell you what, it lives up to the hype of all of this. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, 0 sugar, you're definitely compromising on taste. No, that is not the case at all. You just pour it into your water. And I have pink lemonade, citrus. I had to try all the different flavors there. And with 0 sugar, you're still getting that same taste, that same flavor to help boost your hydration. And right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head over to dripdrop.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That is dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off your order. All right, we're in the home stretch here as college football is getting ready to kick off in a few minutes, so we'll wrap this up soon, but we got the Big Ten to go through, some more comments as well. Dom DeLuca is a baller. He is just reliable. Dom DeLuca is reliable. He doesn't have the most athleticism, the most size, speed, sideline to sideline, but he might be the smartest football player out there at any given time. To go from a walk-on, probably someone, hey, maybe he'll be a special teams gamer for most of his career, to a true reliable starting linebacker. And I think what impresses me the most about DeLuca is his ability in pass defense. Is that DeLuca doesn't have to come off the football field on first and second down. You can leave him out there because he's able to read a quarterback. That's going to go a long way. I know they say you can't teach speed, but I do think that Dom DeLuca, if he continues like this, will be able to get faster, build some acceleration, those kinds of things. But sometimes you can't up here. Dom DeLuca just plays with, he just sees the football field from a different vantage point. Calm down. Penn State stops experimenting as much today. 55-0. Very well could shut him out. I mean, I said 63-7, right? So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm expecting them to play with, have them play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Bama rolls the Badgers 35-3. Upset of the day. Florida beats LSU. I just don't think the setup at Florida is that great. Billy Napier is just not, I just don't know that he can outcoach a Brian Kelly. So let's start to go through, and if you want to drop any predictions, please do. We'll discuss some of those key games that you want to look forward to. We're not going to go through every single, do we really need to discuss Nebraska and Houston Christian? No, we do not. But that is a game today. Okay, so Penn State Villanova at 3:30. Penn State is a 47.5 point favorite. The total's kind of dancing around 55.5, 56.5, but that's the expectation from the odds makers. Oregon is a 4-touchdown favorite against Northwestern. Totals at 51.5. That kicks off in a matter of a couple of minutes here. Alabama hosting Wisconsin. I do think Alabama rolls Wisconsin. I do not like what the Badgers have going on, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I thought Alabama would meet Penn State in the national championship, so I really do have high expectations for this Alabama team. Michigan against Central Michigan at noon, 4-touchdown favorite for the Wolverines, 42.5 points. Nebraska, 48-point favorites, 58 on the total for Houston Christian. Maryland's hosting in-state school Towson, 4-touchdown favorites there, 52.5 points. Purdue is hosting USC, so that is the only Big Ten, or second Big Ten versus Big Ten matchup, right? Northwestern and Oregon. I got to get used to that still. USC is a 21-point favorite. Total is at 60. Rutgers is hosting Norfolk State. Michigan State hosting Youngstown State. Ohio State hosting Ohio, 7 p.m. primetime game. Illinois, Western Michigan, 7 p.m. primetime game. Iowa against Massachusetts, 7:30 tonight. And then, of course, what we're all accustomed to, the 10:30 primetime matchup between the Minnesota Golden Gophers over at Cal. It's nice to see some Big Ten football after dark. 2.5-point favorites for Minnesota, 40.5 points. So if you got any predictions, drop them in the comment section. Feel free. I am intrigued by this Northwestern Oregon game. If you want my 2 cents from the betting angle, I got to imagine Oregon's probably sleepwalking into this one a little bit. Northwestern's just always, look, they're not that good of a team, obviously. But I do like Cam Porter a ton as a football player. He's arguably one of the better running backs in all of the Big Ten. You put him on a better team, that is a much better player. So Cam Porter, Preston Stone at quarterback, that gives you something. It gives you something if you're Northwestern. At the very least, they're going to be physical. They're going to give Oregon a rock fight, whether they like it or not. I think Oregon settles in the second half, but Northwestern first half spread, that's looking pretty good for a 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff for the Oregon Ducks today. I still think they win. They'll just dominate with talent. That's how they'll win this game, right? Alabama, Wisconsin. I don't know what's going on with Luke Fickell. I think they're having an identity issue. And they lost their starting quarterback, even though it seems like Danny O'Neal is a better option being that backup so far to this point in time. But they keep flip-flopping between, we want to be a spread, air raid type of offense. Luke Fickell's going to reinvent Wisconsin's system. Or you go back to your core fundamentals, and Wisconsin's a run-first, power O type of team, and now Luke Fickell's trying to lean into that. It's going to be a work, and I could see Wisconsin being a better second half team. Same thing with Alabama. I think Alabama's better football is in the second half of the season. Alabama's still the much more talented team, and I don't think Kalen DeBoer is as bad of a coach as people are making him out to be. Remember, he led Washington to the national title game not too long ago. So give me Wisconsin, or give me Alabama by a lot. Give me Alabama. Purdue and USC, kind of the same thing. I can see USC sleepwalking early on into this game. Purdue, I like Barry Odom a ton. I think he's one of the better coaches in all of college football. I still think USC just, there's a lot of talent in this group that maybe people are overlooking. They could sneak into the playoff. I look at them in Illinois as similar teams of they believe that they can be in the top 12. USC should win this game fairly comfortably. And then Minnesota, California, the fact that Minnesota is as short, it has to do with the road trip. It's a late game. I'm thinking California. California is a much better team than people are giving them credit for. So Minnesota, I hope PJ Fleck and company prove me wrong, but I'm going to go with the Golden Bears here. I think they cover and I think they win. This team is much better than people are giving them credit for, and I don't think Minnesota is going to be that good this season. So all right, and that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions live pregame show. Thank you so much for your questions, your comments, your feedback. See that Cam Porter's out. Okay, so that is a big deal for Northwestern. If Porter's not available, then that's going to be a problem all day long for them. I don't think Northwestern puts them on upset alert, but first half, I mean, they're going to be wide awake. I don't think Oregon will be. We'll be doing that. We'll have post-game coverage after Penn State Villanova, 3:30 kickoff. Remember, it's on Fox Sports 1. We're going to have coverage all throughout your Saturday. Be talking about it on social media. Have recap episodes, press conferences here on the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. And then talking about everything as usual. Football, recruiting, basketball, wrestling, hockey, you name it. All right here on Locked On Nittany Lions coming up next here on the channel. So thank you so much for the support. Thanks so much for joining me for another conversation. And we'll have plenty more of those around your favorite Penn State sports teams.